if you're stuck in like a PTSD type pattern, which I was for a while, where your adrenals and your stress hormones are just like pumping, 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 you can't get enough space from the racing thoughts to be reflective. And in those times, there's a real need for all of the therapies that can just give you enough space to see the patterns, to see the fluctuations of the mind.
Welcome to the Healing Cocoon. I'm Jacoby Gray, soul alignment and success coach and energy healer, which means I can intuit the subtle layers of your energy field to promote ultimate health and well-being. My goal for this podcast is to shed light on the healing journey itself and help you feel more supported as you embark on the process of unpacking your past to consciously create your present and start living the life of your dreams. Through the study of coaching, kinesiology, holographic kinetics, meditation, Reiki, the chakra system, and many other modalities, I've learned how to release the blocks that were holding me back. Now I'd love to help you do the same. By embarking on your own self-healing process, you'll see the world transforming around you in ways you never thought possible. You'll begin to experience more connection, clarity, love, fulfillment, synchronicity, and success than you've ever had before. So welcome to the Ascension. Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome back to the Healing Cocoon podcast. Today we're chatting with the lovely Maria Villella, who I first met when I was looking for an acupuncturist in LA, and we worked together for over a year, developed a friendship, and she has helped me bring my nervous system and my hormones back into balance. Maria is a nationally Florida and California state board certified acupuncturist and a member of the American Board of Oriental Reproductive Medicine. She's taught yoga for over 20 years as well and has been on the teaching team for Loyola Marymount University teacher training program for over 10 years. She primarily works with women, supporting them through various stages of life to find their own balance and health, focusing on hormonal health, working closely with patients, hoping to conceive with or without IVF, pregnant and postpartum women, and also menopausal women. And she advises women as well on how to take a holistic approach to anti-aging so that they can maintain a youthful appearance and age gracefully. She's currently based in Sarasota, Florida with her family, but is still practicing acupuncture on both coasts. So if you would like to know more about working with Maria, you can find her details in the show notes. And if this episode speaks to you, if you really enjoy it, which I hope you do, please share it with a friend because that's a huge help in spreading the love for the Healing Cocoon podcast. I always just basically start back at the beginning because that is where I suppose the seeds of our traumas or our childhood issues and thought processes and timelines and programs and all of that stuff is kind of created, implanted, and then that expands out into our life and brings us to the point we are today. So where did this all begin for you? Your journey ultimately becoming an acupuncturist and a yogi and helping people in that way?
Italy.
Oh, wow. No one said that before.
Oh, that's a new one, huh? Well, I say that only because that's my background. My family is Italian, and my father is right from Italy. My mother is American Italian, so she's third generation. Her parents were from Italy. So a lot of I guess if I look at my trauma patterns, they all come from that cultural influence and background. A lot of beauty, a lot of things that I enjoy greatly, but then a lot of, guilt and shame and self-criticism and worrying about everyone around you, especially when we look at gender roles within the culture that I came from. So definitely I grew up in more of a patriarchal household. And so, and my parents, although they had the same cultural background, they didn't really, because my father was from Italy, my mother was from America. So she grew up in the United States, and they didn't know each other very well, and they got married. And my father really hardly even spoke English, actually. So, and my mom
Wow.
does not speak, fluent Italian. She has a few words. And so, there was an age difference and a lot of things where they just couldn't work through, just
Mm,
wasn't meant to be
mm,
worked through or wasn't possible. But I think for me, that's a lot of like where, I've always been blessed with good physical health. I've had some points where I've had some digestive stuff, some hormonal imbalances, colds, flus, etc. But physically, I've been pretty healthy. A few body things that came from yoga, like a back ache or a back pain. But I think more of my struggle has been more with anxiety, even though I didn't
mm-hmm.
realize it at the time, and a lot, and now it's in anxiety and insomnia, something I've struggled with for years and I really work with a lot. And I guess it's really finding my own identity outside and beyond what I grew up with as an identity. That's been my journey ever since I stepped on the path of like yoga and um, then acupuncture. And there's certain things that I love about my upbringing. Like I had a good childhood. You could look at my childhood and be like, okay, it was kind of idyllic. We went to
Mm.
Italy every other year. We traveled to beautiful islands. We always had enough, all that we needed financially. My parents came from relatively poor backgrounds, but they really were hard workers and, very disciplined, and they, provided more than we needed growing up. So that wasn't an issue. But there was, I think, a lot of the gender role thing was a big one for me. My parents did ultimately divorce, and my mom is a very strong woman, and she recreated a career for herself. But the whole like, what is it to be a woman, and what is it to be a man, and how do we relate to one another? And um, because my parents divorced, it was always important to me, and maybe my mom also and my father, both of their influence. Like, you always have to be independent. Like, you always have to have your own career, your own path. You can't rely on anybody to do it for you. That was always something that I heard. And I also saw my father's a businessman and my mother is in finance. So they both had these very like structured lives. And I went to art school and then became like interested in the healing arts. And so there was like a rejection of what they had done because I had seen some of the struggles that they had in life. And I thought that it was their career and the way that they looked at the world. But now I am older and I rejected that world. And now at my age, I see like the enormous value of that structured world, and how if we can embrace that and integrate that and fill it with the arts and the emotion and the love, how beautiful it can be. And so,
Wow. So that's the balance of the divine feminine and the divine masculine, I suppose.
yeah, it's like even in what I do, I'm an acupuncturist, and I guess
Mm-hmm.
that's more of it's it comes from Eastern culture, and it's people would say it's both an art and a science. And I would say that's accurate. Like if we think of what a science is, it's something that's based on observation and observing patterns and things over time. And, there's theories that have to be proven. But, you know, I think something that happens is people think Western medicine is the only science, and they look at clinical studies, but we don't recognize how often the clinical studies are actually really contrived to produce a certain outcome. Right. So
Mm,
we can't say that that's a science and these other things aren't a science. They're just like a different method.
mm-hmm.
And also, I think that Western medicine, I've seen some doctors who practice it very artfully. It's a beautiful system.
Yes.
And I think any medication can be used amazingly well, and it can get
With the right
incredible
intention
with the right
behind it.
intention, right? Like
Yeah.
it can really, I've seen patients just heal amazingly from certain medications, or it's just something they need to accept, that they need to be on a certain medication the rest of their life so that they can continue to live. And I think in
Mm.
the holistic community, there can be such a rejection of Western medicine that there's a danger in clinicians having too much of an agenda and actually harming their patients, because it's like, why, what is this aversion to the Western medicine? There's actually a lot that we can embrace here and integrate.
Mm.
So it's really, for me, I'm in such a place now of like really trying to see the beauty and the value in all of it and embrace it all. Like I definitely wish like I would have gone to med school and become an acupuncturist. But that's me because I'm like a synthesizer. I want to
Yeah.
like take
Yeah.
it all in. I'm like, how does this work together well? That's how
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, I see the beauty of like the yoga teachings and the
Mm-hmm.
philosophy and the mind, and then how that translates to the healing journey for people.
Mm.
So
Wow. Oh my gosh, I've got so many questions. I'm like, do I go forward and talk about, so how is acupuncture complementary to Western medicine, or a healing modality of its own right? But then I also want to go back to right when you said you struggled with anxiety as a child, but you didn't know it at the time.
mm.
So what age do you think you were when you became aware of the anxiety? Did you have that awareness, and then was that the point where you started to try to find ways to deal with it, or did you live with it for a while before you were forced into a space of needing to deal with
Well, a little bit of all of it. Let's go on that one because I think it's a
it?
little.
Okay.
We can go back and talk about the other one too, but
Yeah.
this is just a little more near and dear to my heart because it's still
Mm-hmm.
something that I face every day, and it's peeling back the onion layers, right? Because it's not
Yeah.
my first recognition that I had anxiety was after I took my first yoga class.
Wow.
Yeah,
I just got a chill.
yeah, I didn't know I had lived with anxiety all my life until I got relief from it. I took a yoga class, and for like the first time in my life, I was like, I think this is peace. I think I feel relaxed.
Damn, yoga will do that to you.
And it was Ashtanga too, which for most people would not be relaxing, but it took that much to beat it out of me?
Oh, wow, you really were living in the masculine. That's
Oh,
crazy.
for sure.
For Ashtanga to relax you, that's wild. Okay,
Yeah.
please go on.
Yeah, and I think I still do, or I struggle to like embrace my femininity. Absolutely.
Mm.
Um, like the surrender is very hard for me. But so I felt like relief from that, and I was like, okay, I must be anxious. Like then I started to realize that's like okay, and then I just like I became a bit of like a yoga junkie. I just was like reading about it and traveling to go to workshops and taking as many classes as I could. I was in college studying the arts. So there was a part of me that was like, the masculinity was so ingrained in my upbringing that I think I was always reaching for the things that were a little more fluid, a little more freeing, a little more feminine, gave me some space to breathe. I was searching for them.
Mm.
And so I was studying the arts, and I guess, even though the yoga gave me relief from the anxiety, I just like at that point just started to do more yoga and then started to look more at my diet. I grew up on pasta bread and like prosciutto and salami and cheese, all of these things, which are amazing, delicious. But I went more towards like vegan, vegetarianism. I've done every single diet out there, every single one, to try and figure out like what works for me. And now I just eat whole
Mm-hmm.
foods. Like I'm healthy. I do stay
Mm.
away from gluten and to a large extent dairy, and I don't eat
Mm.
processed foods like
Yeah.
unless they're like healthy processed foods if they exist, but but I
If you find them, let me know.
yeah. Well, like, the paleo puffs and that kind of stuff, or like the
Yeah, yeah.
stripped in coconut oil and things like that, quick stuff.
Hmm.
But they're still not whole foods. But, I found a balance and like a way to kind of eat that works with my body. But, the Italian diet didn't work for me. A Mediterranean diet that like the olives, the tomatoes, the vegetables, the proteins, and all that works. But I
Mm.
really don't do well with gluten. And I actually heard recently that like there's a large percentage of Italians that have celiac disease, but they're just
And they
like
don't know it.
undiagnosed. Makes sense.
Wow.
Yeah, I
It
actually
does
wonder
make
how much of
sense.
that affects the brain, because we really understand celiac as being like a digestive issue, but there's so
Hmm.
many other ways that it can affect us physiologically too. So,
Mm.
um, but I guess so then, you go forward and you study. I went through years of therapy, like, and when I got into like relationships with men at that time, like there was such, all of them were like super dysfunctional. I never felt safe in them. I didn't feel secure in them. I had very immature relationships. And part of it
Hmm.
was because growing up in my household, my father and my brother were very protective. And they were like, if a man called the house, there was like, who is this?
Wow, the mafia.
And I would, don't call my house. Yeah.
Wow.
And then they were coming from a good space, like they wanted to
Mm.
protect me, but you know then what I think also happened is I didn't really learn how to like relate to men as like a friend and have that like inquiry to learn about the other gender and different
Yeah.
perspectives. There was just like a fear of it, or a fear
Hmm.
around it. And so then when I got into relationships, it was all kind of like trauma bonding. And it was very much so just like, me not knowing how to be in a relationship and how to show up in a relationship, and boundary issues, lots of those.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so, but therapy reached a plateau, and I love therapy and I still check in with a therapist from time to time. But I guess there comes a point where you have to become your own therapist too. Like you have to start to learn just like what's in your own heart, and like
Yeah, you graduate at a certain point, don't you?
you really
Mm.
do. Um, and I think that's a good thing. Like any good therapist, I think wants that ultimately for you. Um, and so then, I got more into spirituality. I was following a meditation teacher for a really long time. And he was incredibly helpful at in a lot of ways. Like he would really talk about the intellect and then the emotions and then like intuition and how they're all different.
Hmm.
um, but I think the way, either it was his misinterpretation or it was my misinterpretation, the emotions really got neglected and there was much more value on the intellect and intuition. And there was a real confusion for me about like my emotions actually were signaling, like we have to embrace our emotions, right? And what I wound up doing in following his teachings was just like vilifying my emotions, like, oh, that's based on past traumas, that's from the past, not from today.
Oh, wow. So you wouldn't even give any weight to them. It was almost like you couldn't trust them
Totally didn't
as
trust them.
signifiers that, oh, maybe this is a dangerous situation, or maybe that person
Completely.
has overstepped a boundary and hurt my feelings.
Yeah, no,
Mm.
totally. It was like, well, that's mine to resolve because I've had it since childhood. And
Oh,
so
so you took taking responsibility to like a whole new
a
level.
whole new level. It was all my fault, all of it. What they did to me,
Yeah.
how I responded to it, all of it. And
Hmm.
so that led me down, some really, I mean, the cool thing is that I can always look at a situation and see my piece in it, which is like a lot of people can't do that. And I think that's very disempowering when we can't see where we went wrong. The bad
Hmm.
thing is that it like because I cut off from my emotions for so long, or I vilified them or repressed them, and didn't learn how to interact with them in a healthy way where they could signal to me and give
Mm-hmm.
me like, hey, this is time to reflect before you move forward. I just like kept moving forward with my intellect. And I can't even say it was intuition, because if you're not
Mm.
in communication with your emotions, I don't think you can really get in communication with your intuition.
I'm interrupting this awesome chat to quickly tell you all about the free meditation I've created for peace, presence, and empowerment. It kind of sounds like a big promise, but when you break it down, a sense of inner peace comes from being present because you're not feeling anxious about the past or worried about the future. You're simply with this moment here, right now. And empowerment is also a byproduct of presence because what's the one similarity you notice about the people in your life who have the confidence to ask for what they need and want, not in a pushy or narcissistic way, but in a way that feels genuine, clear, and unattached to the outcome of their ask, which ultimately then makes you more receptive to fulfilling their needs and wants. That's true empowerment. And that one similarity that all those people have in common is presence. So, this meditation is designed to give you a repeatable experience of presence so that you can begin integrating those feelings of peace and empowerment into your everyday life. I'd love for you to try it out, ideally 2 to 3 times a week for a month. I know it's a commitment, but you've got this. And let me know what starts shifting for you once you do. So pop onto our website, thehealingcocoon.co, that's C-O, not .com, and download your free audio track right now. Right. Were you studying acupuncture at this point?
Yeah, I was. I'd been doing yoga for years and acupuncture, but there's a brilliant book that's really been amazing for me. It's Camille and Lauren Roche. She's the main author in it. It's Meditation Secrets for Women. And she talks a
Mm.
lot, it's beautiful. And she talks a lot about how meditation and obviously Ashtanga, like all these came from very patriarchal perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about like traditional, even Vipassana meditation, it's all about like sit down, don't feel. When feelings come up, clear it, you know?
Yes, it's that equanimous mind and just staying in that space of nothingness. But there is no allowance for the female energies there.
Yeah. And
Mm.
so, and then that's like, who wants nothing? Right? Like, what is this life exchange for?
Yeah.
Like, I want a glass of wine. I want to eat some chocolate.
Yes.
Like, I want to love. I want to
Yes.
feel, you know? So it was like,
Mm.
it was such a path of like pulling everything away. Then my life just started to feel like that. Like, I literally started to feel like I was dying inside. Like, I was being sucked dry,
Mm.
and like, everything was just about going without, or
Mm-hmm.
and I think there's something too, not always feeling like you need more or grasping, but there's also something too like, hey, like I feel and I want this. So um that's another. And then I guess as I explored like meditation a little deeper, after like some big life changes, that led me into like that kind of thought process where I like didn't listen to my emotions and viewed them as bad. Um, it created a lot of confusion because that was the same time that I was getting married. So it created a lot of confusion about the feelings that were arising as I was entering into my marriage, and then how to
Mm.
process those feelings as I continued into my marriage. And so it set up a really challenging. I wish at the time I had also been in therapy and not just working with this meditation teacher, because I think that if I had a therapist that was saying like, hey, but we've got to integrate these emotions and these feelings, and maybe helped me learn
Yeah.
how to do that rather than kind of,
Like making them conscious and forcing you, well, not forcing you, but allowing you to actually speak it out loud.
yeah,
Because I think sometimes when we're meditating, it's like, oh, there's a feeling. we're just trying to push it away
Yeah.
or push it aside rather than going, well, what is that feeling?
Yeah.
What does that feeling mean? And what is it trying to tell me? Does it come from the past? Is it a warning sign for the future? Like, what is
Yeah.
this feeling?
Yeah. Or is it
Yeah.
something new that I want to birth that isn't aligned with what's right now? Or,
Mm, mm,
there's so many, yeah, they're so important. So I guess like since then I've been, I am divorced now. And it's a lot of like, I'm taking the space now to deal with another level of the anxiety, not my
mm.
anxiety, our
Yeah.
anxiety, right? But that's
our
like our
Yeah,
anxiety
our meaning the family or the world or
world, like
the
the
world.
global
Yeah,
anxiety or the country's
it's a lot.
anxiety or something we're all
Yeah.
grappling with as humans, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's um and for me it's a lot of like it's all like it's my mind, like it's that's another layer of it, is like how am I creating this for myself and my thoughts about myself and my reactions to the people around me and my projections and in my like fear of and insecurities, my fear of not being enough, or my fear of like, confusion or messing up, or fear of missing out, and
Mm-hmm.
all of these kind of issues that are really kind of at the root of it. So I'm like looking more into those. And I guess, you know, I relied on my yoga practice and my breathing techniques to get some relief from the anxiety throughout the years. And then with
Mm,
Chinese medicine,
mm,
I relied on the acupuncture treatments or the herbs, and they provided some relief from it. And they've also like helped me navigate some difficult things, because I think there's something about having these mental issues, these plagues, that you actually just need to raise your frequency and get the chemistry to a certain point that you can actually be in a space of reflecting. If you're
mm,
stuck in like a PTSD type pattern, which I was for a while, where
mm-hmm.
your adrenals and your stress hormones are just like pumping, 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 you can't get enough space from the racing thoughts to be reflective. And in those times, there's a real need for all of the therapies that can just give you enough space to see the patterns,
Mm,
to see the fluctuations of the mind. And I think that's why people go to things like alcohol and medications and substances, because like they're just looking for like a break from all of that,
themselves.
and
Yeah.
I think there's some real value, like there's a real
Mm,
value in all of it, like, and
yeah.
it's just like
So, so have you found a way then? So all of these things and these tools have helped you manage your anxiety. Would you say that from that first moment, the epiphany, when you did that first Ashtanga class and realized that you had anxiety, would you say now that your anxiety patterns have lessened? Or is it still that they're at the same degree or intensity? It's just that you have all these tools of management and ability to identify. Do you feel that I guess for people listening who are like, okay, she's been on this long journey with anxiety,
yeah.
is there the opportunity to actually dissolve it, or is it something that you find a way to live with?
That's a good question. My hope is I can dissolve it, but I think more likely is I find a way to live with it. I think
Mm-hmm.
um and develop a healthier relationship with it. When I was younger, I wasn't even aware of it, but all of my life
Yeah.
was being created out of it. Then the awareness of it
Yeah.
came about,
Yes.
and there was an opportunity to make choices that weren't coming from anxiety.
Yes. Okay. That is beautiful. That is so inspiring. And I feel like anybody listening to this, that is a key
You
you
know,
just gave everybody right there to
yeah.
unlock their future.
And then I
Mm.
continue to work on the opportunities to make choices that aren't coming from anxiety. And that is
Mm.
the daily work. So in that way, I can see the anxiety is actually a huge blessing, because it's now starting to signal to me when I've sort of like lost my connection, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to grasping, like, oh, I'm anxious right now, so I'm looking for something to help me feel stable, help me feel grounded. But what I really need is time to myself to reflect. What is it
Yeah.
really? What am I running from? What am I running to? Why am I running from or to anything?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
I I'm learning to accept it and to be with it instead of I think in the beginning it was just always there. Then it was like do something to make this go away. And now
Mm-hmm.
it's accept it, be with it, but just don't react to it. Find some space you can
Yeah.
respond to it. And
Mm-hmm.
all of those stages were necessary. Like, had I never gotten a relief from anxiety, I wouldn't have known that I had anxiety, right? If I
Yeah.
never took that yoga class, I wouldn't have even known, or maybe, I would have found out some other way. But, and then like
Yeah.
having something that gave me some relief and seeing that, hey, I make better choices when I'm not in that state. But
Mm-hmm.
then that started to push back where those reliefs didn't work anymore because, the underlying pattern was still there. So, I think it's just kind of like the human journey, right? We're getting like
Yeah.
closer and closer to our truth, and we just keep digging a little deeper every day. And,
Mm.
you know,
So, so what is acupuncture for people who don't know, and how can it be used to help anxiety?
yeah. So, um, I guess acupuncture comes from shamanistic roots. So it's really um, a medicine, or Chinese medicine in general comes from shamanistic roots. It's really a medicine that is meant to be administered from somebody who has kind of like gotten to a certain depth and stability in themselves, and they can shepherd you there. And when you're looking at someone, you're looking at the whole being. So you're not just looking at like your meridians, you're not just looking at your chi, your blood, it's your whole being. So the mind is actually a huge part of it. So it's really important that you find somebody that you trust and you connect with in any healing process or journey. I think that's really important. And know that their intentions are clean. Like I said before, you don't want somebody who's going to be like, don't take your medications that your doctor prescribed you, because they have an agenda there. They want to prove that their system is better than the other one. You want to look at the person and see what is best for that person in front of me. That's what I'm going
Mm.
to direct them to do. What does their heart want in their journey? And acupuncture, the way that it works, the best studies that we have on it is some studies like MRI studies of what happens when the needles are put into the body. And what they've seen is that there's more activity in the frontal lobe of the brain, which is where we go for higher order thinking, meditative states, and healing. So it works really on the nervous system, and anxiety and insomnia and most every physiological or psychological illness is rooted in there or goes back to it. Like our
Mm-hmm.
nervous system is very much so connected to our brain, right? So the root of all healing is actually on some level in the mind. And so I can't say that acupuncture will heal everything or even anything. However, what it can do is it can help guide you back to yourself so that you can find your way to heal yourself. So that's how it really works. It's really more about like calming the nervous system and helping you to get back to like who you are. And then the meridians, they do follow some of the musculoskeletal. So it's mostly known for pain, but it's my specialty is actually women's health and fertility, and there's so much research and so many studies on the benefits of acupuncture to improving outcomes with or without IVF. And
Mm.
so it's that there isn't the downside, I think, to a lot of these healing modalities is there isn't a lot of research on them. And so there's not they're not kind of looked at as being valid. They're still a little bit like
Yeah.
woo-woo. But
Yeah.
there is some research for some certain supplements, and then what winds up happening is pharmaceutical companies see the research and then they want to take the supplement and turn it into a pharmaceutical. Like fish oil is a
Mm.
pharmaceutical, curcumin will be next. Like there's, these things happen. And but when it comes to these healing modalities, I just wish we could pull it together in our industries and like get more
Mm.
research, and um, so that we can have a lot more of an impact on the health of the world and the country. Because I really do believe, like, and even as an acupuncturist, there's times where I'm like, I want to know why this is working or how this is working. Because I'll like put needles in, somebody has back pain, and then afterwards they're like, oh my gosh, it's all better. And I'm like, really? Like there's a part of me that's like, that really worked, you know?
Yeah.
And so I have this inquiry to know why and how, like the mechanisms of action. And I think,
Mm.
it's helpful to be in dialogue with that.
Is there a trend, do you think, hopefully towards more scientific studies on acupuncture, or is it still just very much part of that woo-woo sort of modalities or healing
No, there's
art
absolutely a
forms?
trend. I mean, that's part of why I went towards acupuncture as opposed to like Ayurveda or another modality, was because I was so like structured and like a little bit more in my masculinity at the time. And I saw like some insurance companies, a lot of insurance companies actually pay for acupuncture. They only pay
Mm.
for it for pain or nausea and vomiting with pregnancy or chemotherapy. Those are the only diagnostic
Right.
codes that they'll cover. But the benefits are more than that. And in China, for sure, like herbs and acupuncture are much more studied, and they're integrated into hospitals. Like there's this movie, 10,000 Needles, about a
Mm-hmm.
Westerner who went to China after a stroke because he had run out of his insurance benefits here, and then went to China, and they were doing like acupuncture and herbs and everything daily on him. And then they got him walking again. So it's very much so integrated into the healthcare system, which I love. Like, I wish we could have more of that here.
So do I.
Yeah, because it's just, I
But I
mean,
guess they don't want us to actually get better, do they?
you gotta wonder.
We gotta
You
wonder.
gotta wonder. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's a whole other kettle of fish.
yeah, it's big. I don't know that it's that. I think it goes more into like me not knowing I had anxiety when I had anxiety. I think it's like
Yeah,
there's just
yeah.
like, I don't want
There's
to
an
vilify people. I want to actually believe that it's just like unconsciousness. Because I think in their
absolutely.
mind it's just like, that's woo woo. It's not valid. I don't know
Yeah.
that it's that. You know, we've never been to China. We don't know what it's like. It's like, yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
And also, I think there's
Yeah.
also something to like, or there's a lot like the placebo effect. And
hmm
what people don't realize is that the placebo effect actually is a big part of why Western medicine works, I believe.
Absolutely, because as you said, the healing is all in the mind.
Yeah, and if our belief system is that this pill is going to heal me or this surgery is going to heal me, then that pill or that surgery is probably going to heal you. And we all grew up going to
Yeah.
doctors. We didn't grow up going to acupuncturists. So
Yeah.
there's a disadvantage there, right? But I think that these are the things that we have to kind of start to investigate if we want to really
hmm
understand why some people heal, some people don't, why some things work, and also just to bring balance to our culture at large, and find like,
Yeah.
I always believe that it's like the lowest effective dose is the one that you go with. And I believe that not only in like dosing medications or herbs or supplements, but in interventions from healthcare providers. Like the least
Mm.
and the more that we can put things on people to do for themselves, the more we're empowering them, and, making them less reliant on help from a medication or a physician or a therapist or whatever. Like, we want to guide everyone home. That's, I think, as a
Yeah.
healer,
Back to
that's what
themselves.
we want to
Yeah.
do, guide them home to themselves. Then we've done our job.
I hope this episode has inspired you to keep going on what can sometimes be a tough road to inner peace and true happiness. If you want to dive deeper into what we talked about today, go to thehealingcocoon.co for show notes and all things personal growth. And don't forget, if you're loving The Healing Cocoon, then put that love into action and subscribe, rate and review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you download your podcasts. And until next time, my friends, let's rise and shine together.